Welcome back to Ask the Professor with Terry Cooper. I'm Dave Dufour here at RVNN TV, and we're talking about how your RV can be a weapon of mass destruction. And most of this has to do with fire and the possibility that your vehicle, when not well maintained, can actually spark things like wildfires and other kinds of hazardous fire, and as well as endanger you, the RV owner, as well. One of the areas that we come to that we're going to talk about right now is tires. How do tires cause fires?
Well, the number one thing that happens is we're usually running around in low air pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and that tire begins to start heating up. And when it comes undone, we start having some serious issues.
Right.
Um, I mean, we've got documented several situations to where someone had a tire come unraveled, and next thing you know, they were, that rim was on the pavement, creating
Mm-hmm.
sparks. Of course, it's over there in the bar ditch and
Right.
setting things on fire from there.
Right. Okay. Well, here, this is. I love this picture. This is the dreaded road gator. But yeah,
How many times have
this has got to be a southern thing, because I don't know that I've heard road gator up here in the North Country. I mean, we get possums and other things like that, but the road gator, I love it. I love it. It's a perfect description, though. Now, this is a road gator is essentially the tread getting peeled off. Isn't
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
Now it will literally eat up the radiator, the oil pan, the lower side of a vehicle real quick, particularly with some of these smaller vehicles we have out there.
Uh-huh. And so, okay, so
And
you may be rid of it, but the guy behind you may get it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And you talk about you're just kind of driving along and everything's wonderful in your world, and next thing you know, you look up and there's that road gator,
Mm-hmm.
and you're over here swerving trying to dodge that thing.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't always. They can get more than one person. I mean, they're vicious. So we've got a picture here, but this is a tire that has been peeled off, and but now and that's obviously the damage continued on this tire after the tread went. But how do we avoid this kind of thing from happening, for starters? Obviously, a little bit of attention to detail is important.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking air pressure,
Uh-huh.
making sure that we're keeping our air pressures up. Need to look at the age of those tires. I mean, that's a big thing, because so many times the tires have wonderful tread left on them. We think, oh, I've got all kinds of mileage left on it. But then you start looking at the sidewalls, and
Mm-hmm.
the UV from the sun has really broke those things down. So they're cracking and the sidewalls are beginning to give way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you're overloaded, maybe we have a tendency to overload our RVs anyway. And we're always, pounding on everybody, say, please weigh your vehicle, please weigh your vehicle. And the reason being is that these tires are the things that are between you and the highway. And
Yeah.
if we overload them, we heat them up. And then pretty soon we start having tire separation. We have that gator drop out on the highway. And
Yeah.
we have that rim drop down on the asphalt, creating those sparks.
Well, we don't have a gross vehicle weight rating for nothing. And of course,
Exactly.
and the tires, of course, are rated for certain kinds of pressure and load carrying capacity as well. Let me ask you this: you talked a little bit about UV, and I think you've mentioned these in the past. That for RVers, that when very often it's a good idea to have the tire covers, and not for the spare on the back, but actually something that sort of shields the tires as they're sitting there at the campground. Is that a good idea?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's paramount. It really is, because that
Huh.
thing is exposed 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And, when that sun pops up there, all of a sudden it just start eating away. What happens so many times is that we lose count of how long those tires have been on that RV.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start getting 5, 6, 7 years on those tires, they're really beginning to show their age, and their expiration has come. And it's, from then on, you're living on borrowed time.
Right. The tires are not as flexible anymore, and they're more brittle. Does that happens as well?
That's really what's happening. They start
Uh-huh.
losing their flexibility, and they're brittle. And the other thing that I see, though, Dave, is that a lot of people are putting automotive type tires on their RV.
Uh-huh.
And what happens is that when you put a passenger type of tire on that RV rim,
Mm-hmm.
you've actually decreased the cargo carrying capacity of that tire by 10%. And people don't realize that, and no one really explains that to them. So that's why it's critical that when you do put those new tires on, that you get the STs, the standard trailer tires,
Yeah.
if you're putting on an RV. So that way, you don't run into that issue to where you lose some of your cargo carrying capacity.
Okay. Is another problem now? Is it because these tires are only used in some cases? RVers are going out maybe for a weekend, but then the vehicle sits. It's really not getting day-to-day use like an automobile does, so that it maybe maintains flexibility longer. Is there? Am I off base on that theory?
No, you're right on. I mean, if you think about it, if a tire sits there and soon it's going to develop that flat spot.
Yeah.
And then let's say we come in and said we all jump in on Friday and decide we're going to go to the lake and we're going to
Yeah.
have a good time. And we don't realize, but that tire's been sitting there in that position for, say, the last year.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we take off and run around like our hair is on fire and we're trying to go 90 miles an hour because we want to be the first ones there.
Yeah.
Well, pretty soon this tire that's got a little bit of out of roundness,
Yeah.
those belts and things underneath that tread begin to start coming undone from that carcass or from that casing.
Mm-hmm. From the carcass.
Well, that's a term we use around here. Hey, trust me, that tire that we were looking at a while ago on that rim,
Yeah, it was
that's
a
what you call a carcass.
That was a carcass. That was definitely a carcass. It had shed its skin, and it was a museum piece at that point. So, all right,
Yeah,
ready to go. Well, maybe not a museum piece, but anyway, we're going to be looking at bearings and brakes and how maintenance is important there as well, and how they can actually cause some of the same kinds of problems with heat that we've been talking about with tires when we come back on Ask the Professor. So don't go away. The Texas RV Professor wants to hear from you. Email your questions or comments to professor@rvnn.tv. If you have a specific problem, it really helps if you can send a photo as well. That makes it easier for Terry to diagnose your issue. You can also leave a voicemail for Terry Cooper at 877-578-RVNN, extension 708. Follow RV Newsnet on Facebook and Twitter, and you can receive text messages to alert you when we're streaming live by texting RVNN to 72727. That way, you can join us live in the chat room, ask questions, and become part of the RV Newsnet family. Remember, any photos or other material submitted to us become the property of RV Newsnet and cannot be returned.